Hey, Life Fixers. Hope you're having an awesome day. Are you ready to better understand yourself, your partner, and your marriage? Yes, today we are going to go deep on that. I mean, this is a couple that just likes to have conversations. And if you know me, you know what I think about conversations and about understanding other people. So I can't wait to hear what they have to say. If you are new here, you're going to want to make sure to listen to at least the past 10 episodes, so that way you're all caught up and you know exactly what we're talking about. Now, thank you so much, Stephen and Jacqui, for being here. I am super excited to be speaking with you. You want to start by telling us how you guys met 25 years ago?
Yeah, I can kick off. So we met way back in probably 1996. So it's a while ago now. And I had my favourite holiday place, which was down the south coast of Australia, a place called Lorne. And we were just holidaying down there. And, we're in Australia, so we call it the caravan park, but it's probably an RV camp or something like that where people go to the beach in their RVs. So we go in caravans. And Jacqui just happened to be down there, and so was I. And I walked past. I was with another group of guys, and Jacqui was with her friend, and I'd sort of said, "Hey, have you seen the girls over there?" And the other guys had said nothing, so I casually walked past and said to her, just asked if they were going up to the, I suppose again we call it a pub, but the local hotel, go and have a beer that night. And they said, yeah, they were heading up that direction, so that was cool. And met up with them that night, and then after I had a few drinks, Jacqui and a friend had a campfire at their park site. And Jack and I ended up sitting around just chatting most of the night and just really connected. For me, it was a bit more instantaneous. So I had to go to work the next day, and I saw a guy at work, and I said, yeah, I've just met the person I'm going to marry. And he's like, yeah, you're full of shit. Sorry about language, but no, seriously, she's the one. And, and then we went from there. So it's, so Jacqui and I sort of caught up with each other over the next 2 or 3 nights. She had to come back to leave that site. She came back up to Melbourne when she was staying with her aunt and uncles because she was from North Queensland. So she'd moved down to Victoria in Australia. And I was down for holidays for another week. And then when I got back on that Monday, pretty much Jacqui had called me and said, oh, I think you're back. And I said, yes. We just went for lunch and then we just started to go from there. And pretty much 6 weeks after we met, we moved in together. So it was one of those things that I think we both knew fairly much straight away that we were destined to spend a lot of time together, which has been beautiful.
Mind you, I was only 18 at the time. So I was quite young, but just knew it felt right.
What made you know?
I think it was a feeling of safety and maturity. Like he was older and just...
How many years older than you?
10 years older.
Okay.
So there's a fair age gap, but there was definite just safety. I felt good around him. I didn't have the same instant connection that he felt. Like I wasn't there going, this is the man I'm going to marry. I was just having fun. However, there was definite safety and a lot of happiness and yeah.
The age thing at that point in time, we didn't find out how old we both were until probably 3 or 4 weeks into the relationship. I think Jacqui assumed I was a bit younger and I assumed she was a bit older. And we just, because it was just, Jacqui was, had a level of maturity for her age, I suppose, at 18. But, there's, people can have plenty of maturity even younger than that. And probably I was quite immature for my age maybe at that point in time. So that's sort of, we had this alignment. But, it's just one of those things that age has never, ever played a part in how we were. It's always been that, that connection that we actually had.
Yeah, especially as you grow older, like age matters less and less and less. So, but Jacqui, at what point did you know? Stephen looked like he knew right away, right? He went back and he said it was the girl you're marrying, but you took a little bit more time. What was the deciding factor for you? Or what was the moment that something happened? They were like, actually, I think this is it.
I think it was when I fell pregnant, which wasn't long after. It was, actually just before. It was actually, I remember, gosh, it was such a long time ago.
Oh, good memories.
Yeah, I remember it was probably just before we fell pregnant, having that thing deep inside, wanting to know if we were getting married. It was that, yeah, and often I would bring it up. And there was, yeah, just those little sort of conversations, but not going too deep into it. But me there, and I think that's when my age was sort of showing a bit of insecurity and whatnot. But I think that was definitely the time when it was like, wow, I really want to marry this guy. So that would have been, gosh, I was probably just 19.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So under a year later.
Oh, wow. So how has your relationship changed from when you guys met until now?
Oh, how long do we have to talk? You go.
I mean, it's probably worth, being open about a bit of a journey. So I drank a lot. So effectively, I'm a sober alcoholic, if you want to put it in that terms. So we, way early on. So, we had our two kids. So we had a daughter in 97 and a son in 2000. And off the back of that, we just probably went into a mode of just surviving. So it was off my income. Jacqui stopped working. And so we were just in the mode of, we're in renting, just living week to week. And so we were just effectively in survival mode, and we just had each other. So that probably helped cement a fair bit about that worked. I got to the point, I think it was about 2002, when I just made a decision that I didn't want to bring the kids up around alcohol. So I had to make a very clear decision for me that what sort of life did I want? So I stopped drinking, which I think was a positive, because at that point in time, I still had a lot of anger and frustration. So, so early on in the relationship, even though, there was lots of love there and lots of love for the kids and everything else, there was probably just a lot of innate struggle and, a lot of escapism, off in their own different worlds and everything else. Fast forward to where we are today. We're both
Hold on, before you fast forward, what was the thing that helped you stop drinking? Just a decision? That's
there's a couple of events that had taken place. I know there's one specifically where I'd gone in to watch an Australian rules football game, just went in on my own, and pretty much drank all day, and then contacted friends, and they were around at another drinking establishment. So after the game, I went and met up with them and just kept drinking. And Jacqui had gone through the process of, I got her to, organise for her to come in to meet us. So she'd organised two young kids, dropped them off at her auntie's place, got herself all beautiful and ready, hopped on a train and come in to meet us. And by the time she met us, I was too drunk to even do anything. And so for me, that was I just felt really just a lot of guilt and shame and really bad about the fact that, what I had done and that I'd allowed it to get to that point. So that was sort of around about August of, I think it was 2002. And then I gave up on New Year's Eve of that year, sort of planned when I was going to give up. It was that was the big turning point for me, that I didn't want to have to have Jacqui ever to go through that again. But there's also been a lot of lying. I'd work in the city and I'd always say I'd kept missing the train, but I wasn't missing the train. I was just having another beer with mates at work type of thing. So that just wasn't a life that I wanted for Jacqui, and the fact that when I was lying to her, and two, that, I didn't want the kids growing up in that style of situation. It wasn't fair on Jacqui or the kids. So that's drove the decision to give up. And, I suppose getting into the end of this year is 19 years sober, which is pretty cool. Which I'm really proud of. Thank you. So that was sort of huge. And then, for me, in the year 2000, I went and did this amazing course, which was very much around the level of consciousness. And I realized now looking back, which is really funny. So 20 odd years later, I understand everything I learned then is actually stuff I'm re-implementing now, but I just didn't trigger on it. And I actually, funny enough, studied myself for 2 years. So I actually spent 2 years almost just observing myself and my own behaviors and doing a lot of reflective practices and everything else, which is really big in all the spiritual communities now. But, I was doing it back then. And maybe if I had launched on it, I could have made a lot more money like all the other spiritual coaches are doing these days. Maybe I just wasn't clever enough at the time to be the leader of the pack. But yeah, so even that sort of helped, just doing all those things and learning a bit about which actually helped us become less argumentative, because it meant that I could realize when I was making assumptions and I was actually applying a lot of my stuff into Jacqui. So when we would argue, I was getting to the point where I could stop it and actually take a step back and actually start for us to more ask Jacqui as to what assumption, where are you coming from that point of view, or I'd actually be more in the inquiry mode. And I think that really made a bit of a change as well for us. Because I was the one who was actively not being aggressive and sort of, trying to temper the frustration, anger, and making sure. So in the end, we could come out having more, I suppose, open conversations. Certainly not to the level that we're having now, but I think for me that was a change because I had to make the change. It was nothing Jacqui had to do. And I think taking that, reflecting back on that now, taking that sort of ownership of I own my life and my impact I have on others does actually change about how you can have those two-way conversations.
Yeah. So how's that, Jacqui, from your perspective?
I guess myself back then at that same time, I had a lot of mental health going on myself, like anxiety, depression and all that. And so I was quite cloudy in the head. And so when Steve was going through that journey, I wasn't ready for myself to go through a journey. And so when he mentioned how he was learning, how to be better with conversation and all of that, and questioning and inquiring rather than reacting, that would trigger me because I remember it came to me when he was just talking about it. I would get frustrated at what I felt was quite a, I don't know how to word it, like a clinical sort of conversation was happening. It's like, hang on, almost like he would have a conversation with a work colleague or in a meeting. It was lacking, in my mind, it was lacking affection and all that and understanding. It was just very inquiry-like. And I think I held on to that and got frustrated for quite a long time. And so at the time, for years, I just sort of lived in a mode of irritation. And so, yes, we were arguing less, taking away the alcohol and the journey that Steve went on. But I feel with my own stuff, I went years living in irritation and I didn't understand why. And I would project a lot of my pain onto Steve. Like I always wanted someone to blame for what I was going through. So it was a really interesting journey of us both going along separately in our own journeys. And and I think survival mode is a very good way to explain how we lived for quite a long time. So that's,
Well, it seems like you both went on your own journeys and your own pace. Obviously, you were each there to support each other through the journey as they were going through it. But every person has to work on themselves first and then bring that into their relationship. Like, I sometimes think about some of, let's say, major, talking about these spiritual leaders, right? Or some of these major, just like gurus or so-called in the world, who some of them made a lot of money. They built their businesses when they were quite young. Then they got divorced, worked on themselves, and then they got married. And some of them worked on themselves while they were building their businesses. They weren't married. And after they worked on themselves, they were able to build a much healthier marriage. And you got lucky that you were able to work through it and stay married throughout this entire process. Not lucky. Lucky is the wrong word. I know it came with a lot of work, but it shows in you. So at what point did you, obviously we're always constantly growing and constantly changing, but at what point were you like, okay, I think we're more on the same page now, and we've both gone through this journey, we've both changed, but now we're in a different place?
2 years ago for me.
Yeah, you talked to that.
Yeah. I probably started on my journey of healing about 7 years ago. I just sort of accidentally sort of fell into I started seeing this chiropractor, and he helped me heaps emotionally as well. So that was the beginning of my journey of like healing. And that then led to me seeing a kinesiologist. And from there, it ended up being 2 years ago, I went to a workshop. And it was, I don't know if you've heard of Preston Smiles and Alexi Panos, but they're an American couple. And they came out to Australia and did a workshop. And I just intuitively knew that I needed to go to this workshop. And after that, that's when I just woke up to, wow, I'm really needing to work on myself alone, not, expecting Steve to fix himself to make me feel happier. I just had to work on myself. And that was the beginning of me just having an understanding of where we were, where I was, where our relationship was, our relationship with our kids, my relationship with our kids. And that was, almost, it felt like that's when I woke up, literally. So, that's a little sort of snippet of when things really took a turn for me, and learning really how to communicate from the right place. And I don't know if you want to add to.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was from day one I knew that Jacqui struggled with anxiety and depression, right? But I never took the time to actually understand that I was one of the people who just pushed off mental health illness, and so good where everyone is at today, and having a much greater understanding about mental health. Everyone understands physical health, but not as much on that. So I spent a bit more time learning a bit more about mental health and how that actually works and what that meant for Jacqui and what she'd be going through. So, how I was brought up was very logical and practical and not very emotional. So for me, it was like, okay, I can do as much as I can. So I can keep the house clean. I can do the washing. I can do the dishes. I can do the cooking, right? I can do all those practical activities to actually, if I can have the house clean and tidy, at least that's taking out stress and anxiety and those sorts of things. But it still probably wasn't solving the underlying root things, because ultimately what was happening is that I was then, all that was creating a bit in me was also taking on that saying, here I am doing everything and I'm not getting any thanks, right? So there's a whole lot of other stuff that took place whilst doing that, but it still created a bit more of a space that was sort of clean and least, neat and tidy and so forth. Probably one of the major events that happened, with us was our daughter at the age of 15 attempted suicide. And so, I remember she'd come in, she'd actually had attempted previously, but we didn't understand that until she came in one morning and she put a big slash through her arm with one of our cooking knives. And so I'd spent all night in hospital with her, and that really helped me then understand how much deeper I had to go to understand more about mental health and what it meant and where it came from. And again, it was not me trying to fix someone else. It was just me learning how to understand what it meant and where it came from, and how to create the space and be open for the people in relation to how that works. So again, it was that constant journey of, am I actually projecting whole things and expecting them to do it, or am I actually taking time to learn more about something that's actually happening, and therefore what can I do to change my attitude and my behavior and my approach, so that we can actually, get to this point, where there's a bit more of a safe space. And again, less arguments and less things going on in our lives where possible, purely so that, we can have that safer space. So, I've always read a lot, but what I started to read, started to change again to be a bit more in this understanding space. And then, after Jacqui did her weekend away, funny, we ended up in Brisbane 3 weekends in a row. Jacqui did 2 weekends, and then I followed up in the third weekend, and it was a men's workshop. Again, that was 2019, and I had I suppose, an awakening experience coming out of a breathwork session, and pretty much was able to finally release all the anger and frustration and pent up emotion that I'd stored over many, many years, 30 odd years. And so off the back of that, again, that's where our relationship, like it was, I think if we hadn't have done those courses, we would still be together, and we would still be going along, right? And we'd still be supportive of each other. But the level of conversation that we have now is just so fundamentally different. Like, it is just true, deep, we're talking about what happened to us as we were kids and the traumas that we went through and what that actually means. So we're now, when an emotion comes up, one of us just doesn't walk away from the other one. Now one says, okay, I can see something's coming up for you, or I can see what I've done then has actually created a reaction. Okay, so let's talk through what happened. What was that trigger? What did that mean to you? Where's this come from? So what we're doing is that rather than pushing things, week after week or month after month down the road, we actually, we're solving it on that day. We're saying, hey, look, this is what's come up with me. We might go for a drive and sit in the car beside a beach and say, okay, I just need to express what's happened in the last 24 hours. And this is what I'm feeling. I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling this. And it's such a beautiful space to get to now, because, you can just have that conversation. To go back to the point that you spoke before about, the people that made money and got divorced, or, they went along the path. And I'm apologizing to the person who said this on a podcast themselves, because I can't remember who actually said it, but I love what they said. Their view on the path to take is go and find who you are, go and find the journey you want to go on, go and find the person you want to go on that journey with you. So do it in that order, because as you were alluding to before, a lot of people go, right, I'm going to go on this journey, and they just take off on the journey and they find someone to go with. But because they haven't found themselves, what happens is halfway through the journey, they realize that it's either not the right journey or not the right person, or they find the person, then they both choose a journey. And then again, they realize that it didn't quite work out. So I'd say for anybody who's, even if you're in a relationship now, there's two parts of it. You either work through it, because a lot of the stuff, there's a reason why you came together spiritually, energetically, like there's a reason why you both found each other. For me, a lot of things that people get challenged with in their 20s and 30s is the fact that we've learned to become so comfortable in our lives that we just really struggle with discomfort. And because we struggle with discomfort, as soon as those hard conversations come up, or those emotional conversations come up, I don't want to be uncomfortable anymore. So the easiest way to not to be comfortable is to leave, is to pack up and say, right, okay, we're just going to call it quits, because it's got too hard for us to actually have that. But if you actually take a step back in that relationship and say, okay, this is driven from something that happened when you were younger, or something even ancestral that, happened with your grandparents, it passed to your parents, it's passed to you. Try to find a way to talk through that. Then that might be both going and finding, if you want to call them life coaches or spiritual coaches, or going finding therapy or something. But I would definitely find people that aren't coming from a clinical aspect. I would find people who are coming from, again, that emotional, spiritual aspect, because they will actually ask you to look deep down inside. And that's really uncomfortable. I mean, we spend a lot of time in discomfort because you don't want to deal with the shit that you dealt with back when you're 15 or 12, right? There's a lot of stuff that comes up. But if you're not dealing with it, it's just going to be reflected onto the other person. All the other person is just a mirror. They are purely, your partner is your mirror. So everything you're angry and frustrated about has got nothing to do with your partner. They're just putting up a mirror in front of you going, here's the shit you haven't dealt with in your life. So either deal with it, or we're going to separate out. But the problem is, the next person you go to, they just become another mirror, and they become another mirror. So take a step back, there was something that attracted you to this person, and there's something you wanted to spend time with this person at a deeper level than what your brain and logic will tell you. There was something that was in there. But your ego will tell you all the reasons why you can't be together. So you've got to be able to move beyond that, get into your heart and go, I know there's a reason why I connected. The rest of it is just stuff I have had that I haven't dealt with. And if I don't deal with it now, it's going to carry on with me. You see people have divorces 2, 3, 4 times, and they keep blaming it's the other person or whatever else. The reality is it's just because they never dealt with their own stuff in the first place. So for us now, that's where we're at. Like we're so much deeper connected, so much more, well, for me, so much more in love and so much more in tune and so much more just having fun together and just exploring and experiencing life in a whole different light, 25 years down the track than what we were when we first met. But we met for a reason. I think that's the other thing. We know that we met for a reason. We were meant to be the mirrors for each other. We were meant to be the ones that challenged each other. And that's happened. Like many times, like a lot of deep challenges have taken place. And again, it's, you have the choice. You're going to pack up and leave. But there's a saying of how you do anything is how you do everything. So if you're going to pack up and leave the first time it gets hard, then the next time you're in a relationship, it gets hard, you're going to pack up and leave. Next time you have kids and they challenge you, you're going to pack up and leave. Like, at what point are you going to stand and actually take ownership and accountability?
Yeah, that was
well said.
So well. Yeah, we're going to say.
I said, well said.
Yeah. Well, very much so. Yeah. Really, like you said, we have to, I think that as we go more through these difficult conversations, and not that they become easier, but it becomes almost like a thrill. I can't explain it. Like there's a bit of like this adrenaline that comes from being able to have these conversations and being able to find new ways to navigate them and learn new things about yourself and new ways to deal with life and with your marriage and with everything else going on. So I think it's pretty cool at the same time that it's so challenging.
I mean, the other thing to add into that is just that it's not my job to change Jacqui, right? It's my job to understand Jacqui. It's my job to be aware of what's important to her. Because, again, like I couldn't handle having another me. So what's the point changing her into another me, right? I'm always shitty enough as it is at times and fun enough and loving enough at times, right? So, and again, it's about, what's important to her. So, one of the things for us was Jacqui just wasn't getting the emotion. Like she needed the emotion, but on my side, because I never grew up with emotion, I struggled to hand it out. And I still do, but it's something I'm going, okay. But I realized how much the thing that I didn't get is the thing I craved when I was growing up. So now that, as a giving emotion, I'm getting it back. But, we've done just a few, can't remember how many years ago now, but it's just simple things of we always cuddle as we're going to sleep. Like we fall to sleep in each other's arms, and then we wake up and roll over because you're not going to sleep that way all night. But basically that's how we always end the night. And if there's something that's happened, like leading into that, we'll have that conversation before we go to sleep. Then we always end the night that way. And it's because it's becoming, it was something Jacqui said was really important to her to be able to cuddle in the nighttime as we're going to sleep. What I had to realize was that was just me having to get over all the stuff that happened to me earlier on. And in fact, I love it now. It's such an amazing way just to, fall asleep. And in fact, I'm the one that always falls asleep and Jacqui's the one that then stays awake all the time anyway. So, I think I'm getting more out of it of what she wanted. But, but again, it's one of those things about what's important to the person. Ask the question. What is the thing? One of the guys I worked with, they talked about a love bank. What are the 10 things for each person, that's super important to them that they want to be able to see and happen every day. And it could be just, sometime during the day, I just want you to tell me that I'm doing a great job. Sometime during the day, I just want you to rub me on the back. Sometime during the day, I just want you to give me a kiss on the cheek just randomly. Sometime I want you to just, run past and do a really funny thing, right? What is it? Those things that on any given day is important. And so you don't have to spend 10 hours trying to appease the other person. You just have to make sure that you've met some of the things that are really important to them on that given day and find out what they are. Just ask and don't be triggered by the fact if they're asking for something that you feel, don't get offended by it, because it's what's important to them. If you're offended again, it's stuff you haven't dealt with. So go and deal with your shit and then make sure it's important to them and make it part of this what you do.
Yeah, totally. It's like you take 100% responsibility for your stuff, deal with yourself, figure stuff out, and then you'll be able to actually have that happy, healthy marriage that you've always wanted. What's the one piece of advice you wish you would have gotten before you got married?
For me, it's like Steve's been saying, deal with that deep inner stuff. Like, if you haven't worked on yourself, it's only going to get harder when a relationship comes about. Because I find that when you're living on your own and you're not in relationship, it's so much easier to deal with just yourself. Once you add another person in, when you think you're healthy and you've dealt with all your stuff, bring another person in and they wake you up to it.
Oh, yeah.
Totally, like all the triggers come up. So to me, I feel like that's so important. Like, learn to deal with all your stuff. And often, you don't even realize there's stuff there. It's like, no, I'm fine. I don't need to work on myself. I think most people do.
If you don't, I don't think you'd be alive anymore.
Yeah. And so I think, that to me is important, because it brings up stuff that you don't even know is there. And then that way, when another person comes into your life, you've got tools you can use to help you get through a relationship more. And you're more open to, if you've never been affectionate, you understand where that's coming from and how important affection is, and just little things like more awareness. You need awareness in life to get through many things, especially in a relationship.
Every single thing starts with self-awareness, everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't have it. I find I didn't have it for such a long time. So, I think that for me is just work on yourself before you get in a relationship, or even if you're already in a relationship, go and work on yourself before you have kids. And I mean, even with kids as well, like, just keep doing it.
Just never stop. Whatever stage, whatever age, just work on yourself.
Yeah, and be open to many different ways of going about doing the work. Always be open to new things, new challenges, and be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my advice would just be inquire without judgment from your partner. So inquire from your heart. So when things come up or they get a bit hard, just sit back and just ask questions. A simple, powerful exercise that I would recommend for anyone is to be able to ask questions of someone else for 15 minutes without injecting your viewpoint and your story into it. It's easy to ask the first questions up for the first 5 minutes. You try and get through the next 10 minutes without trying to inject yourself into the story or what's happening. But if you can actually maintain that, just keep asking and keep asking, you'll be amazed about where the answers come from. And you'll end up with the aha moments as to why your partner may have reacted a certain way, or may be acting a certain way, or may want you to do things in a certain way. So if you can just spend, when things feel a bit tough, just take a breath, maybe go for a walk, and then come back and just say, right, we're going to spend 15 minutes and I'm just going to ask you a number of questions. Why did this happen? Why are you treating me this way? What is going on? Like, just keep asking and actively listening, and then ask and actively listening. Don't bring your emotion, your viewpoint on nothing to the table. And again, I think most people would be amazed at all the assumptions that they were making about that situation were so wrong, because that's not where the other person was coming from. But we just don't spend the time in inquiry mode. We spend the time in I hear, I judge, and I react. And if we can remove that, and 15 minutes, as I said, it takes a bit of time to get to 15 minutes. But even if it's you just start with 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but doing that is such a powerful exercise for any couple. I'd suggest that, yeah, I think they'd be amazed about where that comes from and what the actual outcome comes from, and realizes that, you know, what you thought they were thinking or what you thought where they were coming from was just completely different, and it was actually innocent. It wasn't actually meant to be an attack.
I love that. So nice speed. Okay, so before I ask you our final question, where could Life Fixers connect with you and learn more about you?
So me, they can find me on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn under The Unearthed Man. I host my own podcast, and it's men being vulnerable about their stories. So it's similar to this. It's just a conversation I have with men, and they come on and they talk to all the stories and challenges and traumas they've had and what they've done to overcome them. But it's for both men and women to listen to. So for the females in their life who've got men and you want to understand a bit where they might be coming from, jump on and listen to other men's stories, and that might ring true. If you're a guy, get over yourself and listen to the podcast, because, you know, facing your own stuff and you might find. But yeah, certainly The Unearthed Man is where you can find me. That's where most of my stuff is.
I'm mostly on Instagram under my name, Jacqui Milverton, and I'm just starting to delve into facilitating cacao ceremonies. So that's the pathway I'm heading on, just starting to. So I've done a online cacao ceremony because we're in lockdown at the moment. So moving forward, that will be my thing.
So much fun. Okay. So for our final question, one that gets asked to everyone, is how would you describe an extraordinary relationship without using love, connection, and for you, I'm putting in conversation?
Good question. Sorry, we haven't gone silent on that one. So we don't end up with radio silence. So without love, without connection, and without conversation.
That's right.
Eye gazing. So sit there and just look into your partner's eyes, and through their eyes, you'll see that's the entry into their soul. So you'll be able to see exactly what's happening deep in their heart and their soul by looking down in through their eyes and just sitting there and just holding that safe space.
So beautiful. Yes. What about you, Chad?
Yes. I was going to say being able to hold that safe space without reaction, without judgment, just being able to open up that space where you feel you can just say anything. I know that's getting into conversation.
No, you could say whatever you want as long as you don't use the word conversation.
Okay,
but you're both working together with the same thing, the safe space and the eye gazing. They're not exactly the same thing, but they work hand in hand together and really build that conversation, that vulnerability, that connection. I mean, I said all the words.
It's hard not to.
The other thing, the thing on the love is, you know, there's the way we use, you know, love in all the romance novels and all these sorts of things. You know, one, if you take love a level above at a universal level, it's just a love for everything, plants, animals, you know, spiders, all the things that you fear, snakes and everything else, right? They're just already perfect in their creation. So love, we can talk about love, but again, it's like, are you connected spiritually? Are you connected energetically, right? So love's a term you use, but when you see your partner, like, and when you see them upset or when you see them happy, like if that does not give you a deep down in your gut sensation of either feeling a lot of empathy or sympathy or sad or feeling joyous yourself, then start to understand, is this the right person for you? And that's the other tough thing about the relationship, right? It's okay to go, you know what? You're not my life partner. You've been a great journey partner and get us to this point, and we've agreed. But I think a lot of challenges is, you know, we talked earlier about if it gets too hard, you know, sometimes people leave when it gets a bit hard, but sometimes that is the actual right decision to do, right? Once you've gone through and you've understood that. So if you're not absolutely going, you know, I get this, awesome feeling every time I see you walk in the room. And if you're happy, I can actually feel it. Then, maybe that person, don't have that energetic connection. Maybe you are living in a materialistic, more of the romance novel version of love, that you're more in lust and you're more in your love with the concept of being in a loving, connected relationship. So that's the other thing that I would just say as well, is just, the belly flies come into your stomach still, and I know that happens for me. When Jacqui's gone out for a day, when she gets home, it's exciting when she comes back home again, because we can talk about things, right? And again, we're 25 years down the track. So that's the thing to lead towards, and that's where it should be.
Yeah, definitely the energetic connection has to be there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, guys. This was so much fun. You have a really great way of explaining things and expressing things in a way that is really easy to understand, but doesn't get watered down. It still has its full depth. So thank you so much. This is a really, really enjoyable and great learning experience.
That's all for this episode of the Life Picks University podcast, but I have a huge favor to ask of you that will not only support the show, but will also help the people you love most. We are striving for 1 million downloads by the end of 2025, and we can't do this without your help. If you love this episode, please share it with 2 of your family and friends so they too can rewire their brains to have an extraordinary marriage. It was awesome spending time with you, and I'll see you on the next episode.